Hello, welcome to today's episode where we're previewing all of the Talent League clubs ahead of the 2025 season. And as we do on every episode, we have Jonty Smith to cover it all for us. Jonty, how are you, mate?
Yes, very good, Mitch. Looking forward to previewing the Sandy Dragons here. Always a strong club.
Yeah, well, when we talk about dominance and three-peats, it's rare for the Dragons that they found themselves in last year under what you might don the Ashcroft era when they had Will and Levi in year one in that 2022 flag, and then 23 and 24 Levi playing a role in all three flags was quite a run. But in between, in that whole bracket, just dominated through the draft and the amount of players that they managed to get onto AFL lists, as has been the case for, I think, the last 15 years. They've had more than any other club drafted to the AFL. 2024 alone saw 10 through the national draft and Cooper Lord through the mid-season draft, just to continue their dominance in really being able to nurture and create AFL-ready talent and draftable talent. So looking to this year, it's going to be quite an interesting focus for them, just given that the amount of action that some of their bottom ages got last year and what we were able to see from those that are going to lead the way in 2025. And then we even got a few glimpses from their 16-year-olds who, again, might have pretty large roles to play as bottom ages this year as they make their case for 2026. But just a quick outline on Sandy as they potentially look for a fourth flag in a row, quite unprecedented. What do you set their expectations for 2025?
Yeah, I think the belief is that compared to each of the previous 3 years, they probably don't have the proven top age talent that they have previously, but they're really confident about their bottom ages, and they've got some players in mid-season draft contention as well. So we might see some 16, 17 and 19-year-olds roll through. Their top age talent, they'll still probably get at least 3 or 4 drafted. You think they always have 1 or 2 that pop up during the year, and they still had a few in the Vic Metro Summer Hub. They've got Archie Ludowick, who we'll talk more about in a second, who's a leading key position prospect, but probably won't have that sort of 10 to 12 dominance that has been quite common through this premiership era, as you touched on.
So what do you see as the big positives for some of the bottom ages who managed to break into a pretty star-studded crop? Like when we're talking about that, we're saying, I think 7 in the top 25 and 8, if we stretch that to maybe 8 in the top 31 selections last year, to be able to be a bottom age player, 17-year-old player playing alongside those guys and holding a role and holding their place in a premiership side. But then at the same time, negatives for that next wave as well, the ones that couldn't quite get the exposure that maybe they needed to in their bottom age campaign to set themselves up for 2025. How did you kind of see them use that balance?
Yeah, I think Sandy do balance it very well. The public schoolers always get a lot of exposure as well through the middle of the year, and then obviously the people at private schools go and play the APS or AGSV footy. But while it is something that they balance quite well, I think there's always going to be the inherent difficulty of players getting less time in their preferred position. So there's more competition for those midfield spots. So if you might be a leading midfielder at a separate club, but then at Sandy you're having to bide your time on a flank or on a wing. I know Luke Kennedy was one that was spoken about in that vein a lot last year. So you do have to develop that secondary position. So that can be a little bit difficult for some players. There might be a bit more positional versatility that needs to be shown. But having said that, it is something that recruiters do like to see. So it's a positive in the long run. It just might take some players a little bit more time to sort of adapt to. And then you've obviously got the positives of the training standards being at such a high caliber because of them being surrounded by such class talent, as you sort of outlined before. And then there's so many private coaches around that sort of Bayside region that they've got to lean on as well. So many gyms and high performance type centers if they do want to do the extras. So there's those positives as well. But they might not get as much exposure in their preferred position. And like you said, it can be a little bit harder to break in as a bottom ager. I remember back a couple of years ago, Taj Houghton didn't play in their 2023 premiership, which is unbelievable to think about now, given he went first round in his draft year, but just couldn't quite crack in just given their depth of talent. But I think they are expecting to play a few more bottom ages throughout 2025, just given the strength of that 2026 crop as they see it 18 months out.
Probably have to go back to 2018 to think that there was maybe a key position prospect that headlined a Sandy Dragons draft crop. It's usually these talented midfielders that come through. And we talk about the Ashcrofts and Finn Callahan. And yes, 2018 did have Bailey Smith, but it was more maybe the King brothers that certainly led the way for them that year. And that could be the case in 2025 with Archie Ludowick potentially being that their top prospect, at least heading into 2025. We think he might be their best chance of kind of pushing for an early spot in the draft. Where do you kind of see his game at off the back of his bottom age campaign, and the kind of what ceiling do you think he can reach come the end of 2025?
I think his ceiling's quite high. He's still quite raw. We know it takes key position players a little bit more time to develop, but he showed some really strong attributes throughout 2024, playing for both Brighton Grammar and also for the Sandringham Dragons. He protects the drop zone of the ball really well and reads the ball quite well in flight. So those are a couple of things that can't necessarily be taught necessarily. And he does those really well. We think as he puts on a little bit more strength, he'll be able to take those contested marks more comfortably. And he's already shown his ability to win one-on-one, and he's very hard to stop when he's reaching full stretch because of how tall he is and his ability to sort of leap at the footy. So that's something that's quite impressive about him. And I think when you compare him to a lot of the other key position talent in this year's draft crop, he's one that recruiters probably would be confident with what his final position would be as a key forward, where you look at others like a Louis Emmett, a Cooper Duff-Titley, sort of go, are they forward or are they ruck at the next level? They're obviously in a similar vein to Archie Ludowick. You could add Jasper Hay and Kleiny White to that mix as well. But yeah, Archie Ludowick seems to have certainly nailed down that key forward role well. If there's one thing that'd be good to say a little bit more of him, it'd be his ability to get up the ground a little bit more, provide an option long down the line, because he has got that capacity. We just probably haven't seen it as extensively as some of his other attributes, like his marking and follow up at ground level and that sort of thing. So yeah, an exciting year for him, and he'll certainly spearhead not only Sandy, but also the Vic Metro forward line as well.
As you mentioned in the intro, there's probably like a three groups we could break this year's squad down into. So we do have the bottom ages who are preparing for their draft campaign. We have some of, the top ages that were preparing for their draft campaign. The bottom ages who we got a bit of a glimpse of or have seen at a lower level, maybe at the national championships under 16s. Yep. And then we have some mid-season draft options. So it's always great to see that some of the, I guess, third year or overage players returning to the talent league to just try and get that one last crack before they potentially look at their options. And Jet Hayata looks like he could be one come the end of May that has some AFL interest, just given what we've been able to see with him in the Dragons and the opportunity to continue to perform in the talent league.
Yeah, there was probably a couple of things that just worked against Jet last year, unfortunately. He got injured at the wrong point of the year, just as he was starting to play himself into some really good form. He broke his arm, a really ugly incident up at Murray. And that ruled him out for the rest of the year. And then obviously it was such a strong crop as well, where taking a punt on a player like that, where they're not perhaps as exposed as some of the other players, wasn't something that was done as much. We saw Sam Toner was probably a victim of that as well from Dandenong Stingrays. So yeah, he's one though that has been really impressive in this preseason. From all reports, he's trained at Richmond, trained on a wing, and looked really good. But yeah, a really good story in terms of how much he's improved both his attitude towards footy and then also his skills on the back of that. A really popular clubman. Last year he came third in their best and fairest, despite being only playing half the season. And he's got the ability to play multiple positions. He can play on the wing, as we talked about, and it's probably where he starts his senior career at whatever level that ends up being. But he's also shown that he can be a really competitive, tough, combative inside midfielder. He's got the athleticism and running profile to be a half forward as well and can hit the scoreboard. So yeah, looking forward to what he can show, and he's certainly got some attributes. So hopefully we see it at senior footy for Richmond VFL, perhaps as a 23rd man, and he might do a little bit of what Cooper Law did last year, just play that one game for Sandy, just to show what he can do against 18-year-olds and really prove where he sits in the pecking order.
Certainly won't hurt that he's going to be in Richmond's VFL program, given the results that they've put forward, particularly in the mid-season draft as well. We saw Sam Davidson in the national draft last year, but Sam Durham, Massimo D'Ambrosio, a number of players through
Garrett
Richmond's
McDonough,
VFL program.
another, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, they've had quite a strong list of players who are looking for that extra chance to break into the AFL outside of the national draft, and it certainly worked for them. They've got a few others, obviously, in this overage bracket of players. Any other Dragons that could be on your mid-season draft watch?
Yeah, I'll just name three. So Sam Buck's one, who's going to share the forward line with Archie Ludowick this year. Probably Archie Ludowick plays as that deeper forward, taking one-on-one marks in the square. Sam Buck's more of a high forward, gets up the ground, and his work rate's something which really stands out. He kicked 5 goals against Sydney's Academy last year and was probably, again, just a victim of how strong Sandy's squad last year was. He wasn't able... he did end up playing the grand final, but missed a fair bit of footy, I think, when the private schoolers came back. I think, hopefully hopefully he gets a few games this year, and he's on the Sandy Zebras list as well, so might play for them as a 23rd player, as a 197 centimetre lean, agile, contested marking type of player. Charlie Rosine's similar boat to Jet Hyata. Both of them got the state combine invite, but didn't end up getting drafted. His hammy just sort of hamstring injury at the wrong stage of the year for him, but his running power is absolutely elite. He kicked 5 goals in a Metro trial game, which I think has, spruiked the interest of AFL clubs a little bit. They just need to see it a bit more from him. So hopefully he gets a clean run of health this year and can show what he can do in that real specialised position. And then Julian Galbally, he's recovering from injury. He sat out last year as a result of that, but he's a developing tool to keep an eye on. And he's born later in the year, which is something that recruiters do look at a little bit. I think he's only 1 week off being eligible for this year's draft class. So he's one who could surprise a few people and isn't necessarily one who's known at this stage, given his lack of experience, but certainly one to keep an eye on.
Let's talk about the guys who are eligible for this year's draft. So Xavier Bammett, Kai Fincher, Sasha Levine, Jack Dalton, and Miles Tyra. There's some of the players that you're happy to highlight and think they could be stepping up for pretty big seasons.
Yeah, I am. I'll start with Xavier Bammett because he's one that I'm really excited to see. He didn't get the time in his preferred position as much as he probably would have last year as a result of, we talked about the strength of Sandy's squad and the difficulty to get midfield minutes, but he showed what he could do in some other positions. It did take him some time to crack into the lineup, but his contested ball winning stuff and ability to do some nice things around the stoppage is quite impressive. So I think he impressed in the under-16s national champs, and I expect he'll be one that could pop up this year and really impress. He's a bit of I think he was in their emerging leadership group last year, the Sandy Dragons, and he's seen as a leader again this year. And Jack Dalton's one that a lot of people would be familiar with. He's a smaller sort of player and has shown he's got good utility value. I think he'll run through the midfield at times this year as well. Both of those players play schoolboy footy, but Jack Dalton's got the background of playing on the wing, so he's got the ability to cover the ground really well, and he's silky skilled. My personal belief is he'll be a high half forward or a half forward if he does make it at the next level. But there's still some conjecture about that, so I expect to see him played in a few different positions this year as that sort of worked through. But he's one who's got the class to run through the midfield.
Now, some of the bottom age boys, I don't think I've seen as much excitement around Archie Butler as we've seen with some of the kids who play at the age of 16, now coming into his 17-year draft campaign as a bottom ager. But he isn't alone in this crop of Dragons who are going to be pressing their case over the next 2 years.
No, he's not. Some of the things he was able to do were freakish at the national championships and really took the eye of recruiters, and then was able to get a game of experience as well for the Sandy Dragons, and certainly looked like he was able to match it at the level. Jack Circuit's another one, probably doesn't quite have the same high-end reputation of an Archie Butler, but he played in their premiership and he was really loved internally for his sort of buy-in to do whatever the squad sort of needed him to do. His defensive running, his sort of off the ball work was really, really highly valued, and he's got some good skills as well. And then Quentin Hoffman, the brother of Lennox Hoffman, is another one in the squad. Cam McKenzie's brother is also in there, and Albert McGowan as a midfielder is one they've got some high hopes for. And they've also got the Vic Metro captain from last year's under-16s national championship squad for Vic Metro, Max Matthews. So those are all some players who will get some exposure sort of, you think, around the flanks or on the wings and that sort of thing. And then, they might bide their time and eventually get some midfield minutes down the line.
Well, Sandy will be going for a stunning 4th premiership in a row in the Talent League. Their campaign getting kickstarted on Sunday, March 30 against the Western Jets. Jonty, thanks for going through the Dragons and what's going to be another exciting season for them.
Yeah, looking forward to watching it. Thanks, Mitch.
You can catch all the rest of our club-by-club Talent League previews on Zero Hanger's YouTube page, and head to zerohanger.com for all the latest news, views, and opinions on the draft.